In a small African village where wealth spoke louder than character, one man was mocked, insulted, and cast aside simply because he was poor. He loved a woman who turned her back on him, faced shame that clung to his name like dust in the wind. But he never gave up. This is the story of Kwame, the man they laughed at, who rose to become the man they all admired. From pain to power, from dust to dignity. In the heart of Nyatima village, under a sun that rose gently over red earth and acacia trees, lived a young man named Kwame. He was honest, hardworking, and kind, but painfully poor. He earned his living repairing bicycles and fetching water for the rich, never complaining, even when others laughed at his patched trousers or his dusty shoes. Despite his poverty, Kwame had dreams that reached beyond the hills. He believed in hard work, prayer, and the dignity of living with purpose. He would often say, "I may have empty pockets, but I carry a full heart." One day, while fixing a punctured tire at the local market, he saw her, Adhiambo, the beautiful daughter of the richest shopkeeper in the village. Her laughter was like music. Her skin glowed like roasted maize. Kwame felt something stir in his chest, a hope he hadn't known before. Kwame and Adhiambo soon became friends, then more. They met in secret under the mango tree near the river, where the breeze was soft and the world quiet. Adhiambo loved Kwame's humility and his dreams. Kwame cherished her kindness and her smile. But when Kwame approached her father for her hand in marriage, everything changed. Her father laughed, a long, cruel laugh that echoed through the compound. "You," he sneered. "A boy with nothing but a bicycle pump and broken dreams." Her brothers called him names. Her mother refused to speak to him. Still, Adhiambo stood by him. Against her family's wishes, she married Kwame in a quiet ceremony under the moonlight, with only a village elder and 2 witnesses. At first, their love was strong enough to fight back the storm. They lived in a tiny mud hut on the edge of the village, cooking over firewood and sleeping on woven mats. Kwame worked even harder, taking extra jobs in nearby towns. Adhiambo stayed home, washing clothes and preparing simple meals. But soon, the pressure from her family began to crack her spirit. Her sisters mocked her during visits. Her father refused to greet her. Her mother sent gifts with notes that read, "You could have had a life in gold, but you chose dirt." Adhiambo began to change. Her smile faded. Her tone grew sharper. Kwame noticed, but he kept praying and believing love would win. The villagers began to whisper. "That's the girl who married the poor bicycle man," they said behind Adhiambo's back. Every time she walked to the market, eyes followed her, some in pity, others in judgment. Adhiambo began spending more time at her parents' home. When she returned to Kwame, her face was tight with anger. "Why don't you ever have enough?" she'd snap. "We're always struggling while my sisters wear gold and perfume." Kwame felt the weight of her words. He worked late into the night, often returning with blistered hands and only a few coins in his pocket. Still, he never raised his voice. He loved her, even as her love began to shrink. At the village's harvest festival, everyone dressed in their finest. Kwame wore his best shirt, faded but clean. Adhiambo wore a borrowed dress from her cousin. When they arrived, her family didn't speak to them. Her father loudly said, "Some people come to eat what they didn't sow," and laughed as others joined in. Adhiambo's face turned red. She pulled away from Kwame, walking ahead like she didn't know him. He stayed silent, standing alone near the elders, watching fireworks light up a sky that didn't feel like it belonged to him anymore. That night, he lay awake, staring at the roof, wondering if love alone could feed a home. One morning, Kwame returned home early to surprise Adhiambo with roasted groundnuts and mangoes. But as he stepped into the house, he overheard her speaking to her sister. "I made the worst mistake marrying him," she said. "I thought love was enough. But I'm tired of this life." Kwame froze. The groundnuts dropped to the floor. Quietly, he turned and walked back out, heartbroken but saying nothing. That night, he didn't eat. Adhiambo didn't ask why. Silence had become their shared language. Adhiambo's brothers came one Sunday, drunk and loud. They stormed into Kwame's compound, shouting insults and demanding she return home. "You're wasting your life with this useless man," one yelled. Kwame asked them to leave peacefully. Instead, they pushed him, knocking over the jerrycan of water he had fetched from the river. Adhiambo didn't say a word. She stood by, watching. That evening, Kwame washed the mud off his clothes by the river, tears hidden by the flowing water. He knew love could forgive, but respect, once broken, was hard to rebuild. A week later, Kwame sat down with Adhiambo. "I think we've both suffered enough," he said quietly. "You want comfort. I want peace. Maybe we must go our separate ways." Adhiambo didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just nodded slowly. They signed the divorce before the village chief. No guests. No words. Just silence and two aching hearts. As she walked away, Kwame whispered, "May your path be full of what you seek." Then he turned and began to build a new road for himself. Now alone, Kwame moved to a nearby town, far from whispers and shame. He started over, repairing bicycles, washing buses, and carrying sacks at the market. Each coin he earned went into a wooden box beneath his bed. He ate little. Slept less. But he prayed every night. Slowly, the townspeople began to notice his honesty and skill. A shopkeeper offered him a small corner to start a bicycle stall. He named it Baraka Wheels, Baraka meaning blessing. And indeed, blessings were starting to whisper his name. One morning, a tall man in a clean suit came to Kwame's store with a broken motorbike. Kwame fixed it in under an hour and refused a tip. The man, impressed, returned a week later with an offer, "Come work at my garage in the city." The city was nothing like Nyatima village. It was loud, hot, and fast-moving. The buildings stretched high into the sky, and the air smelled of dust and diesel. Kwame arrived with just a small bag, a single pair of shoes, and a letter of promise from Mr. Miruki, the garage owner. The garage was located in a busy part of town, surrounded by mechanics shouting over engines and customers arguing over prices. But Kwame was calm. His first week, he washed and learned. By the second week, he was fixing motorbikes faster than anyone else. By the third week, customers were asking for him by name. Mr. Miruki took notice. "You've got something most men here don't," he told Kwame. "You respect the work and the people." Kwame smiled humbly. "I know what it feels like to be disrespected, sir. I won't pass that pain on." He worked from dawn till nightfall, saving every coin, skipping outings, and even sleeping on a mat in the back of the garage to avoid rent. In 6 months, he had saved enough to rent a small room and buy a new toolbox. The boy they laughed at in the village was slowly becoming a man of value. One Sunday morning, Kwame went to the city market to buy fruit. As he negotiated with a vendor, he noticed a woman helping her blind mother cross the road. She wasn't flashy. She wore a simple kitenge dress and carried a woven basket. But something about her spirit caught Kwame's eye: grace, quiet strength, and dignity. They locked eyes briefly. She smiled. He nodded and turned away, but his heart lingered. He saw her again the following week, buying tomatoes. This time, he introduced himself. "I'm Kwame. I fix bikes nearby." She smiled. "I'm Malaika. I help my mother run our vegetable store." They talked about village life, hardship, and hope. Malaika's story mirrored his humble beginnings, a life of struggle, but a heart full of faith. Kwame left with tomatoes and a heart growing full of something he hadn't felt in years: hopeful affection. Kwame's skills became so valuable that Mr. Miruki offered him a partnership. "You've earned it," he said. and the customers trust you. Together, they expanded the garage, hired 3 more workers, and opened a second outlet in the next neighborhood. Kwame began managing inventory, training juniors, and handling customer complaints. Every evening, he returned to his small room, counted his savings, and gave thanks to God. He remembered the day he was pushed into the mud by his ex-wife's brothers, and smiled. One afternoon, a village boy arrived at the garage with a letter. It was from an old friend in Nyatima. The letter read, Adhiambo returned to the village after her second husband abandoned her. She's staying with her parents again. They say she asked about you. Kwame folded the letter quietly. The past had knocked again, but he didn't open the door. That evening, he visited Malaika's stall and bought vegetables he didn't need, just to hear her voice again. Malaika's mother fell ill, and Kwame offered to help with hospital fees. At first, Malaika refused. We'll manage. But when the bills became too much, she accepted his help, with tears in her eyes and gratitude in her voice. Kwame told her, we help where we can, not to earn praise, but to plant kindness where it's needed. People in the city began to speak well of him. That mechanic with the gentle hands and kind heart, they said. He's going places. One evening, under a jacaranda tree near Malaika's home, Kwame took her hand. You've seen me in dirt and in sweat. You've never asked how much I earn or what I own. All I have to give is my heart, and a future I'm still building. Malaika smiled. Kwame, I've seen men with gold but no soul. I'd rather walk barefoot with a good man than ride in a car with a cruel one. That night, under the stars, she said yes. Their wedding was small but joyful. No lavish food, no dancing until sunrise, but every guest left full of admiration and warmth. Even Mr. Miruki attended, bringing a set of golden wrenches engraved with Kwame's name. A true craftsman deserves a symbol of his journey, he said. Malaika's mother cried softly, blessing them with holy water and ancient Kikuyu prayers. And Kwame, who once stood alone in shame, now stood with pride beside a woman who saw his worth. A year after their wedding, Kwame returned to Nyatima village, with a new car, new clothes, and his wife beside him. Children ran behind them shouting, That's Kwame. Kwame has returned. He greeted the elders, visited the chief, and donated money to repair the local school roof. When they passed by Adhiambo's family compound, her father peered through the fence, eyes wide with disbelief. He didn't speak. Kwame didn't stop either. He had nothing to prove, because God had already done the proving for him. As Kwame and Malaika drove slowly past Adhiambo's compound, her family froze in stunned silence. Her brothers, once proud and loud, lowered their eyes. Adhiambo watched from behind the curtain of her room. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw the man they once called worthless open the car door for his new wife, gently, respectfully. Her heart twisted in shame. The man she once left in the mud had become everything she had ever wanted, too late. Later that day, an elder named Mzi Ogala invited Kwame and Malaika for lunch. As they shared a meal of ugali and tilapia, the old man smiled. I remember when they laughed at you, Kwame, he said. But you carried your pain like a shield. And now, look at you. Respect follows you like a shadow. Kwame chuckled softly. I didn't rise to make them regret. I rose because pain taught me how to stand. His words settled in the room like wisdom from a prophet. As they prepared to leave the next day, Kwame passed by the village well. There, alone, stood Adhiambo. She turned when she saw him, eyes glossy with emotion. I heard you were visiting, she said. You've changed. Kwame nodded. Life has a way of changing us all. She hesitated. I was foolish, and proud. And I hate you. Kwame placed his hand on the well's edge. Forgiveness doesn't always need an audience, Adhiambo. I forgave you the day I started over. And with that, he walked away, with peace. Back in the city, Kwame bought a small plot of land on the outskirts. He and Malaika planted mango trees, sukuma wiki, and maize. They named the land Tulia Farm, which means peace. Malaika oversaw the crops. Kwame built a small shed that doubled as a bicycle and motor repair station. From sweat and soil, their second life grew. They weren't just making a living, they were building legacy. After months of trying, Malaika finally had news for Kwame. She was pregnant. Tears welled in his eyes as he knelt and kissed her stomach. "My child will know love, not shame," he whispered. The news spread. Even customers brought small gifts, baby clothes, millet, and maize flour. Kwame, the man once insulted for being poor, now received blessings from every direction. One morning, as Kwame was tightening bolts on a motorbike, he looked up to see Adhiambo's mother standing before him. She looked older, smaller. "I came not to beg," she said, "but to say we were wrong." Kwame put down his wrench and offered her a stool. "You were not the first to judge me by my pocket. But I pray you won't be the last to change." She nodded, humbled. And they drank tea together in silence. A heavy storm rolled through the city, flooding roads and washing away markets. Many businesses were damaged. Kwame's garage was affected, too. Water soaked his tools. The shed roof leaked badly. But instead of despair, he gathered his workers and began repairs the next day. "We faced worse," he told them. "We will rise again." And they did, together. On a quiet Sunday morning, Malaika gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Tendo, meaning faith. Kwame held him in trembling arms, unable to stop his tears. "You are proof," he whispered, "that God never forgets those the world despises." The hospital nurse smiled. "You're a strong man, Mr. Kwame." "No," he replied. "I'm just a man who never gave up." As the years passed, Kwame's garage grew into a respected brand in the city. He employed over 20 youth, most of them from poor backgrounds. He was invited to speak at schools, churches, and youth events. His story became a symbol of perseverance. One day, the mayor himself presented him with a civic award for his impact on the community. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Kwame stood on stage, holding his baby son in one arm. "They looked down on me," he said, "but I looked up to God." With Tulia Farm blooming and his garage thriving, Kwame built a new house for his family, a modest but beautiful brick home with flowers at the gate. He planted trees for his son, and each time he walked through the field, he gave thanks for the journey. The man once thrown aside now lived with dignity, surrounded by peace, purpose, and love. And at night, as he sat under the stars beside Malaika, he often whispered, "If I had been accepted early, I might never have grown strong." Every night, Kwame told his son Tendo stories before bed, of faith, patience, and the strength to rise again. "You come from a man who was once broken, but not buried," he would say. Tendo listened with wide eyes. He didn't know yet that his father's past was heavy with rejection and pain. All he saw was a man full of love and quiet strength. Kwame promised himself, "My son will never taste the bitterness I once swallowed." One day, a letter arrived from the Nyatima village chief. It was an invitation. He wanted Kwame to speak at the youth mentorship event. "Your story has reached our hills," the chief wrote. "Come and inspire the next generation." Kwame hesitated. The place held too many scars. But Malaika encouraged him. "You won't return to be wounded," she said. "You'll return to heal." And so, he packed his bags, not with fear, but with purpose. The journey back was long and filled with memories. He passed the market where he once pushed wheelbarrows, the river where he cried in silence, and the old school he had left because he couldn't afford fees. But this time, he arrived in a sleek car with his wife and son by his side. Children cheered. Elders shook his hand. And even those who once mocked him offered warm smiles. The wind in Nyatima no longer whispered shame, it carried honor. At the youth gathering, Kwame stood tall before hundreds. They said I was too poor to be worthy, he began. But they didn't know I was rich in hope. He shared his journey, from rejection to redemption. Tears welled in many eyes. Young men and women leaned forward, soaking in every word. Your value isn't found in your wallet, he concluded. It's in your will to rise when life knocks you down. After the speech, people began calling him Mwalimu Kwame, Teacher Kwame. Not because he held a degree, but because he had lived through lessons few could teach. The village chief offered him a plot of land near the school to build a youth center. Let your story live here, he said. Kwame accepted with humility. Let the next generation never suffer the shame I knew, he replied. As they prepared to leave, a quiet knock came at the guest house gate. It was Adhiambo, alone, wrapped in a faded shawl. I wanted to see your son, she said softly. Kwame hesitated, then allowed her in. She looked at Tendo and smiled sadly. He looks like you, strong eyes. Then she looked at Malaika. You have what I lost, and what I never knew how to keep. There were no arguments. No bitterness. Only acceptance. After she left, Malaika turned to Kwame. Did it hurt, seeing her? Kwame shook his head. No. The pain lived in the past. I live in the present. That night, he wrote in his journal. The weight is finally gone. I can now walk freely into the rest of my life. Malaika started organizing women's meetings in the city, teaching financial literacy, family harmony, and farming skills. Her quiet spirit grew into a loud impact. Kwame supported her fully, always encouraging her to shine. You were sent not only to love me, he told her, but to light up others too. And just like that, both of them bloomed. Kwame's garage became a training center for jobless youth. He introduced a Train and Transform program that taught both mechanics and life skills. He partnered with NGOs and government officials. His story was featured in newspapers and TV shows. But Kwame always said the same thing, don't clap for me. Clap for the boy who refused to stay down. One night, while sitting under the sky with Tendo on his lap, Kwame told him, son, the stars don't argue with the darkness. They just shine. Tendo looked up. Will I shine too, Papa? Kwame kissed his forehead. You already are. And in the cool night breeze, the man they once mocked at in peace, his past buried, his future rising, and his legacy already in motion. Years passed, and Kwame's name became known not just in the city, but across the region. Community leaders sought his counsel. His words carried weight. His wisdom, once ignored, now guided many. Yet, Kwame never wore expensive suits or lived in a mansion. He still rode to work early, sleeves rolled up, hands ready to serve. He remained rooted in humility. He often said, a tree may grow tall, but its strength is in its roots. One day, Kwame was summoned to the capital city for a national award ceremony. He was being honored for a transformative social impact and youth empowerment. As he stood on the stage, beside governors and scholars, the cameras flashed and reporters asked for interviews. When asked what made him successful, he replied, rejection carved out my strength. Poverty taught me to create. And love, real love, kept me human. On Kwame's 50th birthday, Malaika organized a surprise celebration. His workers, friends, village elders, and youth from his training centers all gathered at Tulia Farm. Malaika stood up and presented a large framed quote that read, He who was looked down on, now lifts up nations. Kwame couldn't hold back tears. It was the first time he cried in public, not from pain, but overwhelming gratitude. One morning, Kwame received a letter in the mail. It was from Adhiambo. Her handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. I'm sick now, and my heart is heavy. But when I hear your name, I don't feel regret, I feel pride that I once knew a man like you. May your light never dim. Kwame prayed for her silently. He didn't respond. Some things, he felt, were best left in the past, where the pain had turned to peace. Tendo, now a young man, stood before his father one evening. Baba, I want to start my own project, a skills center in the rural north. Kwame looked into his son's eyes, full of fire and compassion. Then go, he said. And remember, legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you pass forward. They embraced like two kings. Father and son. Warrior and heir. One quiet Sunday, Kwame returned to his old bicycle repair spot in Nyatima. The shop no longer stood, but the memories lived. He knelt and touched the soil. This is where they laughed at me, he whispered. But this is also where I learned to rise. A group of young boys watched him curiously. He smiled and handed one of them a brand new spanner. Start here, he said. And one day, you'll go far. Malaika encouraged Kwame to write his story. Together, they published a book titled From Mud to Mercy, The Journey of a Rejected Man. The book sold across the country and was added to high school literature syllabuses. Students cried reading it. Some wrote to him. Calling him their role model. His story, once carried by whispers, now lived on shelves and hearts. Kwame visited Nyatima one last time with Malaika and Tendo. This time, they planted a large tree near the school, a symbol of growth, rootedness, and transformation. A plaque beneath it read, To every child who feels unseen, your time will come. Villagers gathered. Even Adhiambo's brother stood in silence, nodding respectfully. The man they once threw out now gave them shade and shelter, without bitterness. Kwame, now older and slower, spent most of his time at Tulia farm. He watched the wind pass through the trees he had planted, and smiled at the laughter of children who played in the fields. He still taught mechanics under the mango tree. Still gave to the poor. Still prayed under the stars. One evening, he told Malaika, if I die today, I die knowing I lived completely. Kwame died in his sleep, peacefully, with Malaika holding his hand. At his funeral, thousands gathered, youth, elders, leaders, the poor, and the wealthy. His casket was simple, but his legacy was grand. On his tombstone, engraved in bold letters, were the words, He was once looked down on, but he never looked down on anyone. And every night in the villages, parents told their children the story of Kwame, the man who turned pain into power, and rejection into purpose.